Princess Valeria of the Kryton Empire stood at the altar with her 4 arms crossed in the traditional wedding pose. She was amazing, 7 feet tall and full of warrior strength. Her violet skin was covered in natural bone armor that had kept her safe in many battles. Her red eyes looked over the crowd of diplomats and nobles who had come together for this important event. Lieutenant James Reed of Earth stood next to her. Next to her big body he looked so small. He was only as tall as her shoulder, and his skin was a strange pale peach color that people have. No armor. No extra arms. She only had 2 thin arms and a body that looked like it would break if she sneezed too hard. Valeria tried not to show how disappointed she was, but she felt empty inside. This marriage was supposed to be a good thing. A partnership between 2 powerful nations. But when she saw James, all she could think about was how much she had given up for peace. The Kryton Empire had taken over 12 star systems. People talked a lot about their warriors. Kids on faraway planets told scary stories about Kryton soldiers who could break through steel with their bare hands. Valeria had been leading troops into battle since she was 16. Her arms had scars from plasma burns and fights with blades. She had earned the respect she got. And now she was going to marry a person. People were the newest members of the galaxy. They had only been part of the galactic community for 30 years, when they left their small solar system in simple ships with big eyes. Yes, they were smart with technology and good at getting along with other species. But what about warriors? Fighters? Everyone knew that people were weak. They were easy to hurt. They got tired fast. To stay alive on most planets they needed special gear. The wedding ceremony went on and on. The person who led the ceremony talked in the old Kryton language about how 2 noble houses were coming together and how strong and united they would be. Valeria said the words she had learned again, and her voice was strong and clear. James spoke the Kryton phrases almost perfectly when it was his turn. She was a little surprised that he had taken the time to learn them. He had a terrible accent, but at least he tried. They were officially married after the ceremony was over. The audience clapped politely. Valeria could see that her father, the Emperor, was happy and nodded. This marriage would stop a war. Earth would give away its technology. The Kryton Empire would keep raiders away from human colonies. Everyone gained something. Everyone, it seems, except her. James looked at her and she saw how the light seemed to catch his brown eyes. His face was soft, not hard from fighting like hers. He smiled at her and it was a real smile, not the fake one she had seen all day. He said softly, "I hope we can be friends," his voice almost getting lost in the noise of the party. Buddies. Valeria wanted to laugh at the word, but she held it in. You would say that, of course. People always talked about understanding, friendship, and working together. They didn't get that the galaxy valued strength over feelings. You didn't make friends by being nice, you made them by being powerful. We'll see, she said, her voice as cold as the moons of ice in her home system. She saw something flash in his eyes, maybe pain or disappointment. He just nodded and kept that little smile on his face. She was angry. Why did he always have a smile on his face? Did he not realize how bad this was? The reception started in the big hall of the Imperial Palace. Kryton nobles in battle armor and human diplomats in suits were all in the same room. There was music, a mix of Earth and Kryton styles that sounded strange to Valeria. Servants brought food from both sides. Valeria picked at her plate because she wasn't very hungry. James sat next to her at the high table. He tried to talk to her a few times. He wanted to know where she lived. About the food she likes best. What she liked to do with her free time. She answered quickly and simply, which didn't make him want to keep talking. He finally understood and stopped talking, focusing on his own plate. Valeria looked at the people. She saw her personal guards standing by the walls, ready to fight even during a party. They were real fighters and each one could take out 5 regular soldiers. She had been training with them since she was a child. They were her real family, made strong by fighting and blood. Throck, her second in command, caught her eye and gave her a small nod of sympathy. He knew what she was going through. No one thought it was honorable to be tied to a person for political reasons. But orders were orders. Duty was duty. The party lasted for hours. People in Krytons talked about how important it is to work together and be peaceful. There was dancing, but Valeria didn't want to join in. Several human women asked James to dance, and he politely agreed. She saw him walk across the floor. She would give him that he was light on his feet. But dancing wasn't the same as fighting. Being graceful in a ballroom didn't mean anything on the battlefield. Valeria's mood got worse as the night went on. This was how she lived now. Married to someone who was a symbol of all that was weak about the newer species in the galaxy. Someone who would rather talk and smile than fight and win. Someone who probably couldn't even lift a normal plasma rifle without help. The party finally came to an end. They had to go back to their shared quarters together because of tradition. The diplomatic ship that would be their new home had already been set up with a new living space. It was neutral territory, not fully Kryton or fully human. They walked through the halls of the palace without saying a word. Guards stayed a respectful distance behind. James looked like he was deep in thought with his hands behind his back. Valeria crossed her upper arms and let her lower arms hang down, ready to grab a weapon if she needed to. It was hard to break old habits. The guards stood outside when they got to their quarters. James opened the door and stepped aside, telling her to go in first. She thought it was another pointless act of kindness from a person. She walked in without saying thank you. The rooms were big and had nice furniture. There was a common area with furniture that fit both of them, a kitchen area, separate sleeping rooms, and a small training room that Valeria had asked for. At least she could still practice fighting. James looked around and seemed happy. He said, "They did a good job with the space." Valeria grunted back. James turned to face her directly and said, "Look, I know this isn't what you wanted. Honestly, it's not what I wanted either. But now we have to deal with each other. We could try to make the best of it." Valeria looked down at him. "I will do what I need to do. That's all you should expect from me." For a moment, something in his face hardened. But then the soft smile came back, though it looked a little more worn out now. He said simply, "Understood. I'll take the left bedroom. You can have the right one. It's bigger." He left before she could say anything, going to his room and quietly shutting the door behind him. Valeria was alone in the common area, feeling empty, angry, and stuck. She was a princess warrior, a commander of armies, and the daughter of the great Kryton Empire. And now she was married to a person who wanted to be friends. She went to her room and shut the door, already dreading the months and years to come. 3 months had passed since the wedding, and life on the diplomatic cruiser Dawn's Promise had become routine. That routine only confirmed what Valeria had thought from the start. She was right about her human husband. He was weak. Valeria woke up every day before the ship's fake dawn. She would put on her training armor, which was a lighter version made for practice rather than real fighting, and go straight to the combat hall. The hall was one of the biggest rooms on the ship. Its walls and floors were strong enough to handle Kryton training methods. Her guards would already be there waiting. Commander Throck, who had been her second in command for the past 8 years, always showed up first. Then there were the others, Mora, Dravik, Kelna, and Vesh. 5 of the best fighters in the Kryton army, chosen to keep the princess safe. These were the people she really trusted on this ship. They were her real family. The training sessions were hard and beautiful. Valeria would fight with plasma staves, which made a humming and crackling sound when they hit each other. The staves were set to training mode so they wouldn't cut through armor, but they still hurt like hell when they hit. That was the goal. Pain made you faster, smarter, and better. On some days they would fight in full combat armor, throwing each other across the padded floor and trying out locks, holds, and escape moves. These were Valeria's favorite times. There was something pure about fighting with your hands, like testing your strength against another warrior. No weapons, no tricks, just skill and strength. They ran battle simulations on some days. The combat hall had holographic projectors that could make up enemies and situations. They practiced how to board a ship, how to defend themselves, and how to fight in close quarters in narrow hallways. Throck was very good at making things hard for them, which made them work harder. James was nowhere to be seen every single day. Valeria thought he might show up at some point. He might have been waiting for an invitation. He might have been worried about training with Krytons. But weeks went by and he never showed up. Not even once. James instead spent his mornings in the library on the ship. When Valeria walked by, she would sometimes see him sitting at one of the reading stations with a data pad, going through texts and documents. She thought it was okay that he sometimes read about Kryton history. Sometimes he read poetry, philosophy, or other useless things that didn't help him survive or get stronger. James would go into the engineering bay in the afternoons. The ship's chief engineer, a Kryton named Vector, didn't seem to mind that the human was there. Vector told Valeria about it once. She had asked, "What does he do down there?" Vector shrugged his big shoulders. "He plays around. Asks questions about how things work. At times he suggests small changes. Last week I actually had a good idea about the coolant recycling system." Valeria had a frown on her face. She thought it was okay to mess with machines, but it wasn't warrior work. It was work for engineers and technicians. Important, maybe, but not the same as combat in terms of honor. Valeria was finishing up a very intense sparring session with Throck one morning, About 2 months into their trip. She had just taken his weapon away and put him on his back, with her plasma stave pointed at his throat in the victory position. They were both breathing heavily and sweating a lot. "Good match, Princess," Throck said with a smile. "You are getting faster." She helped him up and they turned off their staves. Throck looked at the door to the combat hall while they were catching their breath. He casually wiped his face with a cloth and said, "Your husband hides from real work." Valeria looked where he was looking. There was no one in the hallway outside, but she knew what Throck meant. James was probably at the library or the engineering bay again, not here. She didn't say anything, but she didn't disagree. What could she say? That was true. The other guards had seen it too. They thought Valeria wasn't paying attention when they started to whisper. She would hear bits of conversation during breaks in training and meals in the guards' mess hall. One day Dravik said, "The pet is in the library again," and everyone laughed. That is what they called him now. Not Reed the lieutenant. Not the husband of the princess. The pet. Valeria knew she had to stop them. She was in charge of them. If she said one word, the disrespect would stop right away. But she never used that word. She felt bad about it, but most of her thought they were right. James did seem like a pet. He was there for company, not for any real reason. James was always polite no matter what. Every night he would ask her how her day was. He would ask, "How was training? Did you learn anything new?" She would only give short answers. It was okay. Nothing out of the ordinary. James would sometimes bring her tea when she was working late in their shared room, going over tactical reports or learning new ways to fight. He knew how she liked it, strong with a hint of the bitter herb that grew on her home planet. He didn't make a big deal out of it. He just put the cup down next to her and went back to what he was doing. He even began to learn Kryton customs. One day she saw him in front of a mirror practicing the traditional warrior's salute and getting the hand positions just right. He felt embarrassed when he saw her watching, but he didn't stop. He said, "I want to show proper respect when we meet with the Kryton delegations." "Was nice of you." She had to say that. But being thoughtful was not a sign of strength. Being polite wasn't brave. James never fought. Never talked about fighting, battles, or plans. Never showed any of the bravery that Valeria thought real warriors had. He was always kind, gentle, and quiet. She chose weakness. He made up for it by being nice because he had nothing else to give. He couldn't beat her in a fight, so he tried to win her over with small acts of kindness and kind words. The guards kept calling him the pet, and she kept letting them. James never said anything. He must have known what they called him. The ship wasn't that big and Krytons weren't very quiet when they talked to each other. But he never said anything. He just smiled that same gentle smile and went about his daily life. Reading in the library. Playing around in the engineering bay. Bringing her tea. Asking her how her day was. Valeria told herself that she was happy with the way things were. It could be worse, right? She could have married someone who wanted her attention, tried to control her, or got in the way of her work. James let her do what she wanted. He didn't bother her. He was nice and didn't get in the way. A weak husband was better than going to war. That is what she told herself on the nights when she felt bad about how she treated him in a way that made her feel weird. The days all looked the same. Training, meeting with diplomats, going over reports, and more training. James read, played with things, and helped out quietly in the background. She acted like she didn't hear the guards making fun of her. In a way, it was comfortable. Everyone knew where they stood. Everyone did what they were supposed to do. The warrior princess was Valeria. James was the polite husband who stayed out of the way. The guards were good soldiers. Everything was planned out and under control. Then, on a normal Tuesday morning, while Valeria was running a hostage rescue simulation with her guards, the ship's alarms went off. The combat hall was filled with red emergency lights. A voice from a computer said, "Warning. There is a hole in the hull. People are boarding without permission. All hands to battle stations." Valeria's training kicked in right away. She was already walking toward the weapons locker before she realized what was going on. "Throck status," she yelled. Throck was at a control panel, and his 4 hands were moving quickly over the interface. "Multiple contacts, Section C. Damn, Princess, it looks like raiders of Mantics. At least 20 of them. The Mantics." For a moment, Valeria's blood froze, but then she was ready for battle. The Mantics were insect-like creatures with sharp limbs and poison stingers that lived off of what they found and sold people. They were cowards who attacked ships that weren't well protected, but in large groups they were dangerous. They would want one thing above all else. A Kryton princess would be worth a lot of money in ransom. Valeria took her real combat armor out of the locker, not the training gear. "Get your arms up," she said. "We end this fast." As her guards rushed to get ready, she thought of one thing. Where was James? The blast happened at 3 in the morning ship time. The blast woke Valeria up from a deep sleep in her room. The ship shook like it was alive and in pain, and the metal screamed and groaned as something ripped through the hull. She was moving around before she was fully awake. Muscle memory kicked in. In the dark, her fingers found the clasps on her combat armor and quickly secured the pieces. Plate for the chest. Arm guards. Armor for the legs. It only took about 15 seconds for the whole thing to happen. She was already reaching for her plasma blade when the emergency lights came on and bathed everything in blood-red light. The weapon came to life in her hand, making a blue light that cut through the red darkness. There were people yelling in the hallways outside. Feet running. The loud bang of gunfire. Valeria hit the door controls and ran into the hallway. Her guards were already there, coming out of their rooms in full battle gear. Throck was the closest and his scanner was already on, looking for threats. Tell me. Valeria yelled. Throck looked at the scanner readouts with a serious look on his face and said, Mantix Raiders. I see at least 20 enemies, maybe more. They've broken through C-Deck and are spreading out quickly. Mantix. Mantix was the worst of all the scum in the galaxy. Years ago, during a mission to protect the colonies, Valeria had fought them before. They were bug-like beings that were about the same size as people but looked like nightmares. Their bodies were covered in dark green and black chitinous armor that was harder than most metals. They had 6 limbs, 4 arms with blade-like ends that could cut through steel and 2 strong legs that were made for jumping. But their brains were the worst part. Mantics were not dumb bugs. They were smart, well-organized, and completely ruthless. They were experts at boarding actions and kidnapping. On the black market, a Kryton princess would be worth millions. Maybe tens of millions. Valeria felt her battle lust rising, that familiar fire in her blood that came before a good fight. She smiled and pulled her lips back. Let them come. Dravik, Kelna, Vesh, and Mora all got together around her, ready to fight. They walked down the hall toward C-Deck as a group, their footsteps heavy and in time with each other. This is what they had been preparing for. This was their destiny. At the end of the hallway, the first Mantix showed up. It was a scout, smaller than the warriors but very quick. When it saw them, its compound eyes sparkled in the emergency lights. It made a clicking and chittering noise which was some kind of signal, and then it charged. Valeria didn't even stop. In one smooth motion, she raised her plasma blade and cut off the creature's head. The body fell past her, its legs still twitching. The real fight started after that. The main hallway led to a bigger junction area, where the Mantics were waiting. They came at the same time from 3 different directions in a planned attack meant to overwhelm with numbers. There had to be at least 10 of them in that first wave. Valeria fought like her ancestors had, with 4 arms moving in perfect unison. She held the plasma blade in her upper right hand and cut through chitinous armor with the same precision as a surgeon. She shot her plasma pistol with her upper left hand, aiming each shot carefully at joints and eyes. She held a combat knife and a small shield in her lower arms. She blocked and stabbed in a way that has been used in war for a long time. When she fought, she was beautiful. Even her guards, who had seen her fight 1,000 times, were still impressed. A Mantix jumped down on her from above, hoping to catch her off guard. She caught it on her shield, stabbed its soft underbelly with her knife, and threw the body at 2 more attackers. Throck fought next to her, swinging his plasma stave in deadly arcs. Dravik and Kelna were on the sides. Vesh and Mora kept an eye on their backs. They were a perfect unit, with each warrior worth 5 regular soldiers. They moved together like one big killing machine. But the Mantics kept coming. For every one they killed, it seemed like 2 more took its place. There were now blade marks on Valeria's armor. She had been hit on the left shoulder, which made her lower arm numb. One of the Mantics got close enough to spray her with its poison stinger, but her helmet's air filters kept the worst of it from getting to her. They're trying to get around us. Throck yelled over the sounds of war. Valeria also saw it. They were being pushed back like animals being herded. The Mantics weren't just attacking for no reason. They had a plan. They were pushing Valeria and her guards away from the ship's bridge and armory and toward the throne room. It was a ceremonial area for hosting diplomatic events. Big and open with only one door. A great spot to catch someone. Get back. Valeria told them to do it. Don't let them put us in a box. But it was already too late. A new wave of Mantics came up behind them and blocked their way out. They were now surrounded, stuck in a hallway with no cover between 2 groups of raiders. This was not good. Valeria's mind was racing with tactical choices. They might be able to fight their way through, but they would lose people. Maybe very serious ones. And if any of her guards died because she made a bad decision, that's when she saw James. He came out of a side hallway that led to the living quarters. He was in his pajamas, which were just a shirt and pants with no protection. No armor. No guns. His bare feet were on the cold metal deck. Valeria's brain couldn't understand what she was seeing for a moment. It didn't make any sense. James should be hiding in their rooms behind locked doors and waiting for the guards to take care of things. That's what civilians did when they boarded. That's what weak people did. But he wasn't hiding. He was walking toward them. Toward the Mantics. "Run, James!" Valeria yelled. Her voice was rough with fear that came out of nowhere. "Get to the escape pods." He didn't run. He didn't even look at her. He kept walking at a steady and slow pace, right toward the closest group of Mantics raiders. The Mantics saw him. One of them, a huge warrior with blade arms that looked like curved swords and stood at least 8 feet tall, stopped paying attention to Valeria's guards and focused on this new, seemingly defenseless target. It screamed, which sounded like laughter, and then it lunged. The thing moved quickly. Mantics warriors could jump 20 feet in one leap, their blade arms outstretched to stab and slash. Valeria had seen them use those strikes to cut armored soldiers in half. James should have died. What actually happened took 3 seconds. 3 seconds that Valeria would never forget. 3 seconds that changed everything she thought she knew about people, strength, and her husband. The Mantics jumped, and its blade arms came down in a deadly blow. James got up. He didn't jump back or try to get away. He moved forward into the creature's attack range faster than Valeria's eyes could follow. He was standing still for a moment. The next thing he knew, he was somehow under the Mantics's guard, and his hand hit the joint where the creature's blade arm met its body. There was a wet, crunching noise. The Mantics's arm was broken and bent back at an impossible angle. The thing tried to scream, but James's other hand was already around its throat, with his fingers digging into the soft tissue between the armor plates. James then moved again, using the Mantics's own speed against it. He turned his body, and somehow the 8-foot-tall insect-like creature flipped over his shoulder and hit the deck so hard that it cracked the metal plating. The Mantics's neck sounded like branches breaking. The total time that has passed is 2.8 seconds. The thing stopped moving. Valeria stood still, her plasma blade still raised, unable to understand what she had just seen. 3 more Mantics turned to face James, who they now saw as a threat instead of an easy target. They all attacked at the same time. James didn't think twice. He moved like smoke, water, or something else that didn't follow the laws of physics. Every move was exact, efficient, and perfect. There was no showiness or waste of energy. Just pure, scary efficiency. He grabbed one Mantix by the antenna and pulled it down, using the creature's own weight to push it into the deck. His foot was already moving when it hit, and it kicked another raider's knee joint so hard that the chitin broke like glass. The third Mantix was able to get its blade arm around to James's chest. He caught the limb, twisted it, and heard that wet crunching sound again. Then he put the creature's own knife against its throat. One quick move. 3 Mantix are down. 4 more people charged him. Valeria finally spoke up. "What?" But she couldn't finish what she was saying because James was already moving again. He picked up a plasma rifle that had fallen from one of the dead Mantix, checked the charge in one smooth motion, and fired. The shot hit the first attacker in the eye. The head of the creature blew up. James was already rolling, avoiding return fire, and coming up behind another Mantix. He used the rifle as a club to hit the creature's leg joint, then shot it in the thorax from very close range. Around Valeria, her guards had stopped fighting. They stood there with their weapons half raised, not saying a word. James killed 8 Mantix raiders in less than a minute and a half. On his own. Not armed or almost not armed. The rest of the Mantix seemed to know that they had made a big mistake. The sounds they made, which were like clicking and chittering, changed pitch, which is a sign of fear. They began to pull back. James walked over to a control panel on the wall and calmly typed in a command code. The emergency blast doors slammed shut behind the Mantix as they ran away, blocking their way out. The remaining raiders dropped their weapons and raised their blade arms in surrender when they realized they were trapped and had no way out. James only then looked at Valeria. His eyes were still warm, still brown, still nice, but now they had something else in them. Something old, patient, and deadly. He asked softly, "Are you hurt?" as if he hadn't just taken apart trained killers with his bare hands. Valeria tried to say something. Nothing came out. When the ship's security teams got there and took the surrendered Mantix into custody, the Dawn's promise fell into an uneasy silence. The lights for emergencies had gone back to normal. Medical staff were looking at everyone to see if they were hurt. People were taking the bodies of the dead raiders out of the hallways. There were blood stains and scorch marks that needed to be cleaned up. Valeria was in the ship's medical bay, where a technician was treating the burns on her shoulder. The injuries weren't too bad. They were mostly surface wounds that would heal in a few days with the right care. But she didn't feel much pain. She was thinking about something else completely, going over and over again what she had seen. James was gone after the fight was over. He was there 1 minute, calmly telling the security teams to keep the prisoners safe, and then he was gone. Valeria didn't know where he went. Part of her wondered if he had gone back to their room, where he could read and do his normal things, as if nothing had happened. Her guards were all in one corner of the medical bay, talking quietly to each other. Throck kept moving his hands around, copying what he had seen. Dravik shook his head in disbelief. Even tough warriors like them were having a hard time understanding what had happened. "Princess," said the medical technician as he finished the last bandage. "You are all set. Don't put too much stress on that shoulder for a day or two." Valeria nodded and got up without thinking. Her legs felt strange and shaky. Not because she was hurt, but because the weight of the truth was slowly crushing her. She saw James in their shared room, standing in front of the mirror in the bathroom. He had taken off his bloody sleep clothes and put on a plain gray shirt. He was looking at the cut on his shoulder where a mantic's blade had hit him. Valeria said from the door, "You should get that looked at." James looked at her face in the mirror. "It's not deep. I've had worse." That simple sentence hit her like a punch. He had worse things happen to him, of course. Because James had fought before. Not even close. "We need to talk," Valeria said. James nodded slowly. "I know." He finished cleaning the cut and put a bandage on it. Then he went into the common area and sat down in one of the chairs, motioning for Valeria to do the same. She didn't sit down. She stood in the middle of the room with her 4 arms crossed and said the things that had been building up in her chest since the fight. "Now explain." James stared at her for a long time, and she noticed something in his face that she had never seen before. Being tired. Not being tired physically, but something deeper. The tiredness of someone who had been carrying a heavy load for a long time. "What do you want to know?" he asked in a low voice. "All of it." Valeria's voice sounded sharper than she meant it to. "You're a soldier. A fighter. It might be the best I've ever seen. Why did you keep this from me?" "I didn't hide it," James said, and there was something in his voice that made it sound like he was lying. "Maybe anger. Or sadness. You thought I was weak. I never corrected you because, to be honest, I hoped you would never have to see that side of me." He got up and walked to the window that looked out into space. The stars were faraway points of light that were cold and never changed. "Valeria, do you know what Earth is like?" he asked. She frowned. "It's your home world. I have read the reports. A normal Class M planet with..." James turned to face her and said, "Earth is a death world. That's what the other species call it when they think we can't hear them. A world of death. Do you know why?" Valeria didn't say anything. James went on, "Because everything on Earth is trying to kill everything else. Our planet has very bad weather that can go from freezing to boiling in just a few hours. Bacteria and viruses can kill you in just a few days. Some of our predators have evolved to hunt other predators. Plants that are poisonous, bugs that spread disease, and natural disasters that can destroy whole cities are all things we have." His brown eyes were very focused as he walked back to her. "Your people lived on a planet with strong gravity and big predators. So you got bigger and stronger. You grew 4 arms so you could fight better. You grew armor that was natural to keep you safe. That makes sense, doesn't it? That's how evolution happens. You changed to fit your surroundings." Valeria nodded slowly. James said, "Humans evolved in different ways. We didn't grow armor. We didn't grow extra arms or claws. We didn't get bigger or stronger. Do you know why?" "Why?" Valeria asked, even though she was scared of the answer. James said simply, "Because we evolved something better. We learned to be adaptable. Smartness. Endurance. We became persistence hunters, which means we didn't need to be faster or stronger than our prey. We just had to be more determined. We would follow an animal for days, sometimes weeks, without stopping until it fell over from being too tired. Then we would kill it." He began to walk back and forth and his words came out faster. "We didn't need natural armor because we knew how to make armor. Better armor than what nature can give you. We didn't need claws because we learned how to make weapons. Spears, bows, guns, and plasma rifles are always getting better and better. We didn't have to be the biggest or the strongest because we learned how to work together, plan ahead, and solve problems." James stopped and stared at her. "And we learned something else that most species in the galaxy don't really get. We learned how to be completely heartless when we need to be. People don't just fight when something threatens what they love or their lives. We can't be stopped. Our DNA has been shaped by millions of years of living on a planet that wanted us dead. Valeria's throat got dry. You made me think you were weak. James said no in a calm but firm voice. I let you feel better than me. There is a difference. You wanted a weak husband because it made you feel strong. It gave you a sense of power. I gave you that so you wouldn't be afraid of me. I wanted. He stopped for a moment and something weak showed on his face. I hoped that one day you would really like me. You didn't respect me because you were afraid of what I could do. Like me for who I am. The words hung in the air between them. Valeria thought about what had happened in the last 3 months. About how James had made her tea without her asking. Oh. She remembered how the guards had called him the pet, and how she had never stopped them. She thought about how she had thought that being kind was a sign of weakness. Valeria whispered, I have been a fool. James said no again. You were only seeing what you thought you would see. That's what most people do. It's easier than going deeper. He walked over to where he kept his things and took out a small data pad. He gave it to Valeria. She asked, what is this? James said, my service record. Before I became a diplomatic liaison. I didn't show you before because it didn't seem important. But you might want to see it now. Valeria turned on the data pad. As she read, her eyes got bigger. Lieutenant James Reed. The Earth Special Operations Command. 12 years of work. Sent to 43 places where there was fighting. Their specialties were hostage rescue, fighting terrorists, and close-quarters combat. Honored 14 times for bravery. 3 times for actions that saved whole groups of civilians. There were reports of missions attached. Valeria opened one at random and began to read. It was about a hostage crisis on a mining colony. Armed rebels had taken over the building and were threatening to kill the workers. James and his team went in with very little gear and no civilian deaths. The report had a tactical breakdown of how they did it. Valeria read another report. And one more. They all painted a picture of a soldier who was not only good but great. Someone who could come up with new ideas and find answers that others missed. Why did you leave this? She asked, pointing to the data pad. Why become a diplomat if you were so good at fighting? James smiled, but it was a sad smile. Because I was sick of fighting. Because I had seen too many people die. Because I wanted to help stop wars instead of fighting them. Our people were supposed to be at peace after you married me. That seemed more important than killing people. He put the data pad back and put it away. Valeria, people are very good at war. For all of history we have been at war with each other. We know 1,000 ways to win at any cost, kill and destroy. But we also know that winning a war is not the same as winning a peace. The strongest warrior isn't always the best person to lead. Not always the best choice is the deadliest fighter. James sat back down and stared at his hands. I never wanted you to be scared of me, he said in a low voice. Fear is simple. The easiest way to get respect is to scare people. Anyone with a weapon can scare people. But how do you earn trust? Getting love? That's harder. That's what I wanted. Valeria felt something break in her chest. Those months of being cold. All the time she had told him to go away. All those times she could have been nice to him even a little bit but chose not to. I'm sorry, she said, but the words didn't seem enough. He looked up at her and his brown eyes were warm again. Forgiving. He said, I know. They sat together in silence for a while after that, the weight of 3 months of misunderstanding hanging between them. Valeria kept replaying moments in her mind, all the times James had been kind to her, all the small gestures she had dismissed as weakness. The tea he brought her. The way he learned her language. How he never complained when her guards mocked him. She had thought he was trying to compensate for being weak. But now she understood. He had been trying to build something real. Something that could not be built through fear or displays of power. The tea, Valeria said suddenly. You always brought me tea when I was working late. James looked up from his own cup. You seem stressed. I thought it might help. And learning our customs. The warrior's salute. I wanted to show respect to your culture, James said. To understand where you came from. Valeria felt her throat tighten. Every act of kindness had been genuine. And she had thrown it all back in his face with her coldness. How did you stand it? She asked. 3 months of me treating you like nothing. How did you not get angry? James was quiet for a moment, considering his answer. I did get frustrated sometimes, he admitted. But I understood where it came from. Your people value strength that you can see, muscles, armor, weapons. I do not look strong by those standards. It made sense that you would doubt me. But you are strong, Valeria said. Stronger than any warrior I have seen. In some ways, James agreed. But strength is not everything. I wanted you to see other things about me first. I wanted you to see that I could be patient, that I could be kind, that I could respect your space and your choices. He set down his teacup and looked at her directly. Fear is easy, Valeria. Making someone afraid of you is the simplest thing in the world. I could have shown you what I was capable of on day one. I could have sparred with your guards, beaten them in combat, made sure everyone knew I was dangerous. And you would have respected me probably. But you would have feared me too. And I did not want that. What did you want? Valeria asked, though she thought she knew the answer now. I wanted a real partnership, James said. Not one built on fear or obligation, but on actual trust and understanding. I wanted you to choose to be with me not just because we were married for political reasons, but because you wanted to be. Valeria stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Her reflection stared back at her, a tall, powerful warrior who had been so certain of her own superiority, so sure that she knew what strength looked like. I have learned something today, she said quietly. About humans. About you. What is that? James asked. The most dangerous warriors are not the ones who show their teeth constantly, Valeria said. They are the ones who keep their teeth hidden until they are needed. The ones who have the power to destroy but choose not to use it. She turned back to face him. You are more terrifying than any Kryton warrior I have ever met. Not because of what you did to those raiders, but because you chose not to show me that side of yourself for 3 months. You had that power the entire time, and you never once used it to intimidate me or my guards. Even when we mocked you. Even when we called you. She stopped, shame flooding through her. The pet, James finished for her. I know. I heard them. You heard? Valeria felt her chest constrict. And you said nothing? What would have been the point? James asked. Getting angry would have just confirmed their belief that humans are emotional and unstable. Challenging them to combat would have made them fear me but not respect me. So I let it go. That must have hurt, Valeria said. It did, James admitted. But I have been called worse things by better people. Words are just words. They only have the power we give them. Valeria walked back to where James was sitting, and for the first time since their wedding, she sat down beside him. Not across from him at a distance, but right beside him. I want to start over, she said. As you suggested. As real.